So we're going to go over the satin stitch here. It's basically just stitches that you're going to put right next to each other all the way down the leaf. And if you want this to look smoother, you want to use less threads actually, not more. So I'm starting with 3. You can do this, 2 is better than 1 in this case, but you can definitely vary the number of strands that you put in here. If you use a full 6, satin stitch isn't going to look as pretty because you're going to have too much bunching of the thick 6-strand thread. So I think the most I would use is 4. You just come in and out, you just put single stitches next to each other, and you can either put them at an angle like I'm doing here, or you can run them vertically. I think an angle looks prettier for leaves, but satin stitch is a fill stitch, so if you're going to fill an entire space, satin stitch is one of the ones that you can use. It doesn't work as well when you're filling a space that's bigger than like an inch or so, because the longer the stitches are, the more they get kind of unruly. They'll come up off of the fabric and bunch. So a better fill stitch would be called a long and short stitch instead. But you just go down this line here, placing the stitches next to each other, and initially you're going to see the stitches, but as you fill this in, they'll blend together a little bit better. And again, this is another one of those stitches that you really want that fabric tight. Satin stitch tends to take a while, as do most of the fill stitches, because it's just a lot of area that you have to stitch in. Over time you get pretty fast at it. One thing I will say, these lines are permanent that I've put on here, so I need to make sure that I cover them up with the thread, so I want to be going just on the outside of the line so that the line doesn't show through. Depends on how you transfer your fabric. You can use pens that transfer and dissolve either in water or air, so the first time that you wash it or after a few hours the lines disappear. In this case I didn't want them to disappear because when you work with a piece of fabric for a while, the lines from the or the ink from the lines when it's disappearing will kind of get worked away by your hands. So that's how it's going. This is the end of my satin stitch, so you can see that I've varied the angle a little bit to kind of give the leaves more definition. You can see that I went all the way up to the base of my woven wheel rose as well. And if you wanted to make this more smooth, because I do kind of want the veins to show up a little bit, that's why I used 3 threads. You can use less threads, 1 or 2. It will take a lot longer, but it'll look a lot smoother. So the disadvantage to this stitch is that it uses a ton of thread because on the back you are doing the same amount of stitching. So it will use a lot more thread than some of these other stitches. But if you play around with some of the angles, you can get some very beautiful things.